Hello, everyone. This is David, Fairly Secret Music. So today's video is kind of like my introduction and how I got into power metal. I've had a few phases with power metal. Um, 2007 was a big one that kind of really got me into a bunch of the bands that I listen to now. And in about eighth or ninth grade, so that was like around what 87, 88 is around the time that I got into uh kind of like the first ones, and then now I'm just crazy about power metal again. So Fate's Warning, Awaken the Guardian. I believe this is or could be considered power metal. I didn't really get into Judas or no, well, I didn't get into early Judas Priest. I got into some mid-era Judas Priest, and I didn't really get into Iron Maiden. At one point, I was going to buy Seventh Son of a Seventh Son, and as at the last minute when I was having the guy grab that out of the case to give me, because this was back in the 80s when they had them locked up at this one store that I went to. I saw 777 and then I also saw Fate's Warning No Exit. So I had enough money to buy one or the other, and I went with Fate's Warning No Exit, which was the greatest decision musically for me because they have been one of my favorite bands through the years. Um, but at that point, that was like 88, I think. Um, I didn't have anything by Iron Maiden except for maybe their first album, which I really think is their best album overall. I'm weird that way. Um, but Awaken the Guardian, it can be, in my mind, is kind of like entry level to power metal. It's kind of got proggy stuff, double bass, but not a ton of it. Um, Twin guitars, really high vocals, and like lyrics for like the Sorceress and Fata Morgana, the Guardian, Giant's Lore, all just fit into the power metal kind of stereotype of power metal lyrics and things like that. They're a little less. I can't really say cheesy because he does say the line by God, what does he say? Blasphemous black Bibles, bias you betray, bigotry, slay the Hydra, burn the talisman. It's kind of, but anyway, and he has a song called Valley of the Dolls on here. So Fate's Warning were kind of my entry into what I think of as power metal. Um, Next band, or maybe simultaneously with Fate's Warning, would have been Helloween. I believe this was 88. I believe this was the year or two after, which was Keeper of the Seven Keys Part 2. Of course, these are the expanded editions, so they don't give me the correct dates on the back. um, and honestly, Helloween were kind of, it was like Helloween, Rage, um, let's see who else. Helloween, Rage, maybe Manowar. Um, there might be some other bands. Kind of like a lot of people's entry into power metal, especially with songs like the title track of or no, sorry, the song Halloween or Future World, um, or I'm Alive. Wait, is I'm Alive? I don't know. I can't remember the song titles quite as much on part one as I do on part two. And part two, god damn it. This had what? Eagle Fly Free. Well, Dr. Stein was kind of like the weird thing. Dr. Stein, I think, was the song that, you know, made Ed Guy think, we can do silly stuff too. I only go up from for Halloween. I only really go up to Keeper of the Seven Keys Part 2. I have the newer one with Michael Kiske back in. I've thought about getting Pink Bubbles Go Ape. Convinced me to get Pink Bubbles Go Ape. And Chameleon, I think it is, right after that. Although if I do get those two, and I have Better Than Raw, I believe, also, but at that point I might as well just get a bunch of other things. So I don't know. But I Want Out, and the title track, Keeper of the Seven Keys, um, are all good examples of just awesome power metal. And his voice is basically, if I think of power metal, kind of Michael Kiske is exactly who I think of. I mean, maybe not so much anymore because I have a lot of other power metal bands in my collection. But for years growing up, and basically that's kind of what I always think of. So, Keeper of the Seven Keys. Next one, which I still have the $4.98 price tag on it because I had this on cassette for the longest time, and I found it used, and I traded up. Manowar, Kings of Metal. Now here's the part where I might get some. Oh, you're so wrong. But this is the only Manowar album I like. I've tried earlier things, and they kind of sound like watered down Saxon. I would rather just listen to Saxon for that style of metal. This one has Hail and Kill and Blood of the Kings. And Jesus Christ, that's all you need from Manowar, especially Blood of the Kings, because it's so good. And his voice is so awesome on both of those songs. Let's see. Wheels of Fire is good for what it is. It's just kind of silly, but Pleasure Slave, the bonus track on here, should have never been added. Kingdom Come is great. The Crown and the Ring. The Crown and the Ring's pretty awesome too. But honestly, Hail and Kill, and especially Blood of the Kings is, I think, the best thing they've done. I've tried albums after that too, and I just can't get into them. There's just so much filler. And honestly, there's quite a bit of filler on this album too, but I had this when I was younger, so it's kind of like ingrained in my head, and so I dig it, but I don't think they're as amazing as everybody kind of says. A band that I do think is quite amazing on this album especially is Riot Thundersteel. Now, this is a band that started out as so much not power metal, and on this album they got Bobby Jarzon on drums, and some of the tracks, Mark Edwards from Lion and Steeler. But wow, this album was awesome growing up. I remember hearing what was it? Maybe Fight or Fall. I don't remember what single they had. We had a channel that we could get in from Texas called Z-Rock, but you could hear it in Minnesota. So they had some weird long range radio signals, and so you could hear Z-Rock even though they were Texas based. And they would play this, and shit, I think they played like King Diamond, Crimson Glory, all that stuff. The first Crimson Glory is a good kind of proto power metal. Transcendence is amazing, but I don't think of them as a power metal band. I think of them kind of more in the later Fates Warning, or like Queensryche time, like kind of more progressive and stuff. But songs on this, holy shit: Thundersteel, Fight or Fall, Flight of the Warrior, On Wings of the Eagles, Johnny's Back, just awesome. If you don't have Riot Thundersteel, get it. You can probably get it on Amazon for like $7.99. I know it's really cheap, or at least it was. The follow-up had a lot more horns than they should have had. Um, there are a lot of people mucking around with their production on that album. But honestly, you can always say, no, let's not do that idea, because that's a stupid idea. But this album is killer. I do not say killer normally, but oh well. Oh, maybe there's a precursor to Painkiller. Now, I really loved Defenders of the Faith, but I don't think of Defenders of the Faith as a power metal album. I do, however, think of Painkiller as very close to being power metal. And in 91, when this came out, I thought it was awesome. It did come out in 91, didn't it? Let's see. Of course, they have the old school, or they have the remaster date on there. So, but yeah, I think it was 91, maybe 90. I'm not even sure. But I mean, here, let's look at these song titles. Painkiller. I mean, obviously you have Scott Travis just kicking ass throughout this whole album. Hell Patrol, All Guns Blazing, Nightcrawler, Between the Hammer and the Anvil. I started singing that the other day, but honestly, One Shot at Glory is such an epic, such amazing song, especially when he sings the the I Can Hear the Battle Cries part. That is amazing, and especially the way he does it at the end. I went searching to see if he had ever done it live like that, and doesn't do it quite the same live. So studio magic, baby, studio magic. Now, then there's like a big gap where I was into bands like Thought Industry and Anacrusis and Mr. Bungle and all that stuff that was not even close to power metal. And in 1998, Labyrinth came out. What is this? Return to Heaven Denied. And this album is fantastic. It is over the top Italian prog or power metal. And unfortunately, the drummer to me is a little bit one trick pony. Especially during the song Night of Dreams. That song should have subdued drums. It shouldn't have double bass all over it. It almost should be like an AOR hit is really what it should be. But the songs where they do need double bass, he's the guy for you. I just wish he said he thanks Gene Hoglan and Sean Reinhart, and I think maybe Vinny Caluta, all these drummers that he plays nothing like, and they were all really technical, a lot of hands, different crazy stuff. There's little bits and pieces where he sounds like, yes, that's exactly those kind of guys. But for 95% of it, he is not. He is pretty much one trick pony, double bass all the time. But Rob Tyrant, or Roberto Tirini, or whatever his actual name is, his vocals are fantastic on this album. I basically, from this album, I've gotten all the, I think his name is Olaf Thorson. That's a fake name, but he was one of the guitarists. He's the guy that looks kind of like Fabio in this picture. This guy. So he is the mastermind behind like Shining Black with Mark Bowles, Vision Divine. What else did he do? Well, Labyrinth. So, but there's a lot of albums between those bands. They just put out a new album. I don't know how many original members there are, but I know those two guys, the singer and the guitarist, or one of the guitarists, are still in the band. So, yes. And I know everybody is afraid to talk about Earth, but I don't give a fuck. This album is awesome. People might be afraid to talk about it, but it's always like a weird subject. Matt Barlow is basically the Paul Stanley of heavy metal, and his voice on this album is amazing, especially on the song Wolf. You get Richard Christie on drums, who is amazing, and you get Steve DiGiorio on fretless bass. I wish they would have let him fretless it a bit more. Get a little slidey and stuff, but yeah, this album is pretty damn awesome, and it's one of the few that I really like by Iced Earth. I only have like 3, maybe 4 Iced Earth things, but this one is just fantastic. Just listen to Wolf. That alone is worth it. I actually have 2 copies of this too, so it's kind of weird. So that was, 98 into 2000, 2001 or whatever. And then in 2007, I really got into power metal and bought a ton of stuff. I originally bought all the Nocturnal Rites, all of the next 2 bands also. This is a little different than most of their albums, but this honestly I think is their best album, because the songs are catchy. Johnny kind of sounds like the great parts of James LaBrie without all the slightly annoying things of James LaBrie. I'm a Dream Theater fan, but sometimes I don't like his vocals, partially because I thought Charlie was a better vocalist. What I would love to see is Ray Alder in Dream Theater. I think that would fit really well. But yeah, the song Never Again and Call Out to the World, awesome. This album, of course, is not your typical power metal. There are power metal adjacent songs on this, but things way before this, or even the album before this, or the album after it, which is called Phoenix, are way more power metal than this album, but I think this is their best one. Gravedigger. Now, this is totally different style vocals. And normally I wouldn't really get into this band, but they're one of those bands that, so I got everything up till, what year was this? I think it was 2008 or something like that. I'm not even sure anymore, because this is of course the redone version, because I had a ton of stuff by them, and then I decided to sell it all because I needed money or some dumb shit like that. And so his voice is very gravelly. They are kind of like power metal's version of AC/DC. And I like it. But every album has basically that super medieval artwork, and songs are about early albums. Their earlier couple albums were kind of different. Those are albums that I don't have. And I'll just say this. So this is my introduction to power metal. So what you're not going to see is Rage, which I have all of those. All of the Running Wild. What other bands? I've kind of touched on things. Let me look. So those were kind of the ones that I was like, should I show these? But I wanted to kind of give you a thing up until 2 years ago, what I was listening to, how I got into power metal. So no Rage, no Running Wild, even though I got totally obsessed with both of those bands a couple years ago. Maybe I'll do my post 2020 power metal obsession. But yes, Gravedigger. And this is the album Liberty or Death that pretty much kept on kind of coming up in my head like I should get that again. And I kept on listening to it. And then in 2012 or sorry, 2020, 22 or whatever, I decided, yeah, I got to get all of their stuff. And it was a good time because we went to Chicago and we stopped in Madison at one place, and there were 3 albums that I got remastered versions, but they didn't come with lyrics. And then I found a box set, which is this trilogy. I think one's Excalibur, and I'm not sure where the other 2 are, but if you know about the box set, you know what I'm talking about. But this is the album that pretty much reeled me in, and then reeled me in again when I was stupid enough to sell this shit in the first place. This band also I became obsessed with, which is kind of funny because in 2007 they put out their last album, which was the album right after this. This, however, is the album that I still think is the best because it has the song Battle Gods, Ariok the Chaos Star, the Aquilonia Suite, and Song of the Swords, which 4 songs of just, in my mind, perfect power metal, perfect example of power metal. Morby's voice is somewhat of an acquired taste. He sounds, you can hear the Italian accent, just like you can in like Michel Lupi from Vision Divine or Secret Sphere. But he's just got just an awesome voice, and he can hit so many amazing high notes. And people have talked about seeing them in Greece and in Italy or wherever just recently, just as on this, I'm going to post this on the the Facebook group. It's called Melodic Power Metal or something like that. I'm sorry about screwing up that name, but a lot of people, I posted, hey, does anybody like this band? Because I don't see anybody talking about them. And it got a ton of replies, which was awesome because I didn't know if anybody was into this band. Turns out that he actually sang for Labyrinth for like a year. And I want to say that was like 2000 to 2001. And I hope they put on another album because it's been since 2007, I believe, since the last album that was put out. So that brings me up to like the 2007, 2008 era. And in that era, or in a little bit past that, I ended up getting Nightfall in Middle Earth. This was the only Blind Guardian that I had up until, I want to say, well, let's see, when did they do these? 2019. Because when they were putting all these 2-disc versions where they have the remix and the original CD, that's when I got into Blind Guardian. My friend Michelle is obsessed with Blind Guardians. She's also obsessed with Hansi. She thinks he is the fantastic singer. She thinks he is the cat's meow, which he is. But I love his voice on this album. This is probably one of my favorite albums by them. Also, the one that they just re-recorded, something out of time or something. I can't remember what the name of that one is. I have the original 2-disc version like this. Then I have the single disc version. And then somebody sold the 3 or 4-disc version of the re-recorded one, so I had to get that too. So I have technically 4 versions of this album. So now I have everything by Blind Guardian. Um, and that leaves me to one thing that I did get in 2022, 2021, or whatever, and that is Lone Wolf Raised on Metal. Now, I have all the Lone Wolf stuff. This is another guy whose voice is such an acquired taste, and it's so good, and it's almost so different from most power metal singers that it it's funny because you don't expect to hear that voice. Very raspy, very, he uses a lot of weird vibrato with a low kind of, I can't even do it because I'll hurt my voice doing it, and it's just crazy. But if you have not heard Lone Wolf Raised on Metal, get this. Let's see if there's pictures of the guys. So you get that. Oh, there's Jens. That's the guitarist and vocalist. His voice basically looks like he looks. You're like, oh, that's a guy who's just belting it out. So, I miss these kind of photos sections. Anyways, I'll just show you that guy. But do yourself a favor, get some Lone Wolf Raised on Metal. All right. I will see you with my next power metal video, which is going to be my 2020 through 2022 thing. The thing is, those bands I'm not as familiar with. I'll just basically do one that brings you up to date on what new shit that I'm getting and stuff. So I hope you enjoyed this video. Let me know if you like it. And as always, I should have said this at the beginning. You should have watched this whole thing in double time because I pause and I say things slow, and watching it in double time is way more interesting. Have a good night. Power Metal.